Hey folks, I'm Mark Sussman, the editor of Willamette Week. I'm delighted to be here with Rick Turoczy, the co-founder of the Portland Incubator Experiment. Hi, Rick.
Hey, how you doing?
I like your studio. How'd you get that purple light?
Well, we had some grow lights that we just kind of shot up at the back wall. And you'll also notice, I don't know if folks have seen the Storm Large, but she has the same unicorn, oddly enough. So I think
In
maybe
the
that should,
video we did with her the other day?
yeah, I think maybe everyone you interview should get a unicorn of some sort in the background.
That's great. Rick, tell us a little bit about how you're sheltering in place.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I run a program called Pi, which is an early stage startup accelerator program, and we saw this coming a little sooner because we were planning a big event. And so we were kind of scared that we were going to have to cancel the event or rearrange. And so I feel like I started a little earlier than most folks. I think I just got past week 6 or 7 of sheltering in place. So um, I'm now kind of through, I think, the rough part of it. I'm starting to actually feel like I'm being more productive and like starting to get into a mode of work. But a lot of people I talk to still aren't anywhere near there yet.
So Rick, as the longtime co-founder of Pi, you've been responsible for shepherding into existence a countless number of startups. You're really sort of this unheralded Oregon economic engine, but you're also shepherding arguably the companies that are the most vulnerable to the public health crisis and the economic impacts, because these are
Mm-hmm.
companies who probably didn't have much of a product to begin with, or rather much of a profit or revenue,
Mm-hmm.
and now all of a sudden they're stalled. Now, you just graduated a class
Yep.
in March. Can you tell us a little bit about how they're doing, and talk about a few specific companies if you wish?
Sure. Yeah. Well, most of them have seen no decline in revenue because they weren't generating revenue anyway. So, that's, some of them are just kind of keeping on, keeping on. I think, we've had a few that their product or offering was, explicitly geared toward in-person meetings or like
Can you give us an
helping people
example?
with connections or like things that required physical proximity to other people, and so they've been having a bit of a hard time. But we've had others, like we had a kind of like a advanced meditation app that's seeing a lot of traction because people are trying to be more mindful and trying to deal with anxiety in different ways. We have a woman who she and her team have built an app for teenagers to manage their anxiety and behavioral health.
God, that's perfectly timed. What's the name of that company?
That is called Camber. And so they're where they kind of accelerated their product launch and development and that kind of thing to get that product into people's hands more rapidly. So that kind of thing. And then the other interesting part is seeing alums of our program who, for whatever reason, were always kind of held back by an educational hurdle in the market or in the community, who that that hurdle has suddenly been eliminated because people really now truly understand the value of their product. I think the best example is a company called Milk Run here in town, which is, if people have used Instacart or food delivery, it's that, but for small farmers and consumers. So they ensure that local farmers around Portland can deliver food directly to consumers. So it's like the world's largest farmers market. And for folks outside of Portland, they were having a hard time understanding. They're like, why would anybody do that? But now that the food systems are taxed and that people aren't able to get to the resources they need, the value of Milk Run has really come into the fore, both for the producers, the farmers who don't have restaurants or whatever to deliver food to, but also consumers who are finding the services that they would typically use either inaccessible or completely unavailable.
I'm just wondering, at this moment in time, even if you've got a startup with the best idea for, and is thinking strategically about this pandemic and what's next, I would assume that it's hard to get anybody to get a even a virtual conference with a VC right now, that the economy is so shaking that there's just no money flowing in. Is that?
Yeah, I think to your point, because Oregon doesn't have a lot of capital, and because it's kind of this vicious cycle of not a lot of capital, takes a long time to build a business. Therefore, if you generate any wealth from that business, not you're not willing to kind of risk that capital because it took you so long to make it. I think we've always been less aggressive than other investment communities. I think the upside of that is Portland founders are used to talking to investors who are risk averse. And now every investor is risk averse. So we're familiar with those conversations.
Do you have any sense, and this may be too broad of a question, about how well Oregon is situated when we come out of this? You know, I had a chat with Rukiah Adams from the Meyer Trust, in which she claimed that she thinks Oregon is better positioned than most, that there's going to be a reversion to basic science as opposed to this sort of synthetic capital that she talks about. I'm not sure I bought her argument, but I'm just wondering if you've got a sense of the Oregon startup community's relative strong points and how that plays into what we're heading into for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's some things that will do fine just because they don't take a lot of capital and aren't really trying to be a gigantic company. I mean, that's Oregon's bread and butter, is either small retail or very unique consumer product or specifically targeted software product or website. I think those things will continue to do fine. I don't know that we'll see the kind of bigger software companies coming out of this because of to your earlier point, they often require a vast amount of capital to get going and to grow rapidly. And I honestly don't know if that growing rapidly is going to be something that comes back for the foreseeable future. I mean, I think everybody may be really focused on good business models, generating revenue, pretty capital efficient kind of companies. So I think I'm on the middle ground. I think Oregon will do okay. It won't be easy, but we are experienced at the kind of slow and steady growth. And Stephen Green made a great point the other day. He's like, some of this is just an excuse to shut down a business that isn't working. Like, your business has been working just because the economy was good, not because you built a good business. And some of this is kind of culling the herd a bit. I think the upside.
That's a true message that Stephen's offering, but that's got to be hard for some people to take.
Mm-hmm.
Accept.
Yeah, for sure. But he's never one to shy away from providing that kind of feedback to people.
Right. You know, you're very passionate about what you do, and you're just a wonderful writer. But you're also pretty critical of the investment community as an advocate for small businesses. And I'm just wondering if you think that dynamic is going to change at all as a consequence of all this.
I don't know. And I am critical. You're absolutely right. But I try and temper that criticism from an objective viewpoint too. Honestly, they made the money. They can do what they want with the money. And I'm just saying there are opportunities to do other things should they choose to do that. But it's not my role to tell you what to do with your money. I'm not qualified to do that. I hope that it provides some I hope it's a reboot to the conversation. So it felt like it was just like arguing constantly. And maybe this, I've heard a lot of people reference it, but this global pause where the entire human race is going through the same thing is really bringing us back to a core of humanity. and an understanding of relationships and the power of community and how people truly work with one another to get through these kind of things. So I think my hope is that that provides some middle ground for these conversations to start anew on better footing for both sides, quite frankly, because I think it's uncomfortable on the investor side too. Like, investors are getting pitched by startups who have no business trying to raise venture capital, and yet there's this constant deluge of that activity as well. So it's finding how to right size the market and the opportunities for both sides, I think.